What's up, everybody? Jed Johnson here from dieselcrew.com. Of course, you know they call me Napalm, and this is video number 10 in the 31 days of Q&A here at the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you leave comments below. It supports the channel. It supports the algorithm. It helps get videos presented in front of more people. And not to mention, share this video if you have any friends that might be interested in the topic that we're going to cover today. Getting right into that, this one comes from Steven Reno, Thickety Thick on YouTube. And he says, do you do the ice baths for hands and forearms, and what do you think about it? I have done those in the past. When I was working with Paul Knight on my gripper training, he had me doing those ice baths quite regularly. Actually, what I did was contrast baths. So you take part of your sink, you fill it up with ice water. The other side of the sink is filled with very warm water, and then you go back and forth. And I would also spin billiard balls underneath the water to promote more circulation and movement inside the water, which made it much more agonizing in the cold water. When your fingers are moving, that water hits even more intensely, and it really makes it a different experience. So I encourage everybody to try that out. These days, you know, and I would only suggest doing the contrast baths. I wouldn't just do the ice. The fact of the matter is, I almost never do any ice. So if I have an injury, I rarely ice it. The only thing that I really ice these days, if something is hurting, is my back, my spine, because I have a history of my discs swelling and causing issues with the nerves. So I will ice my back if I've done something to it, but by far my bigger effort is put towards prevention of back injuries more than ever before. So I can't even tell you the last time I iced something. I don't even know. It's been years, I can tell you that. Why is that? Because he wants to know what I think about this stuff. So why is it that I don't ice anything? Well, I was introduced to Dick Hartzell years and years ago. It was probably 2001. He was at the Pennsylvania State Clinic for the NSCA, and he was talking about recovery from injuries using elastic bands and traction on the joints. Specifically, he was talking about he talked the most about ankle sprains during that talk, and he introduced me to the concept of ice actually shutting down the healing process. So for years I didn't ice anything, and then like I said, I only did the contrast baths because my coach at the time, Paul Knight, was telling me about the values of it. So I tried it then. But I've even read that the guy that came up with rest, ice, compression, elevation, he even says these days that he was wrong on that, and that he does not encourage ice on an injury. So it actually kind of makes me shudder when trainers and doctors still to this day recommend ice for injuries, because of that concept of it shutting down the healing process. So, we can talk about that in the comment section if anybody wants to. I'm just telling you that that's the way I've been brought up through this whole entire process of learning about training and recovery and things like that. I just don't use ice. I've never done one of those cold dips where you sit in like a horse trough or whatever, a horse tank thing, and do the full body submerging. I think, I made a post on Facebook not too long ago where if you think a 2 or 3 minute ice bath is going to fix yourself, but you only get like 4 or 5 hours of sleep at night, then you're sorely mistaken. I think there's other things that you need to get into that you need to correct first, and one of them is trying to aim for 8 hours of sleep at night. And I'm the guy that used to go 6 hours of sleep for years at a time and didn't think anything of it. But these days, now that I'm older, I definitely try to get 8 hours all the time. And I think that for recovery efforts, I think blood flow is probably a more important thing, at least for me. And that's what I encourage with my coaching clients. So, you know, you've seen me do things like sledgehammer finger walks on this channel before. And I had to do those during the times that I was doing them because there were days that I was training grip 2 days in a row, and I had to improve my recovery from one day to the next, and I found that those were very useful for me. So, you know, my program changes over, you know, the course of time, and sometimes I need more recovery work and sometimes I don't. So when I do, I'll do more blood flow stuff. If I've really got my volume locked in and I'm recovering from one session to the next and I'm able to keep on pushing the envelope and still recovering, still seeing progress, then there's no need to do anything extra. I'd rather do the strength work that's going to get me towards my goals. So that's kind of how I look at it. I put precedence over, you know, I'll use a hand massager every so often for injuries. I'll use roller balls and things like that if I'm feeling sore. And, you know, I'll just change movement patterns so that I'm not doing the same thing all the time. And I think those kinds of efforts have been more rewarding for me for recovery than anything else. So, you know, a lot of these things can become band-aids, and if you're not addressing the situation that's causing the issue, then, you know, the band-aids are only going to be so effective. So I look at prevention as the biggest thing, and then generally, you know, increasing blood flow with light resistance as probably the second thing, and really no icing at all to speak of. So I hope that's been helpful. If so, give it one of these, brother. Be sure to subscribe, leave your comments below. Any questions, put them down in the comment section too. Feel free to share this away with anybody who constantly is icing their injuries. All the best in your training, everybody. Take care.